Greetings, my fellow from Love Solving Thinkers. Thank you for tuning to LL3-Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful realms of planet Earth. Today's date is Sunday, October 12th, 2025. It's episode 1905. American Free Press issue 41 and 42, 2025. Before I proceed, you can find me on multiple social media sites and podcast channels. Just type in Look Your Luck number 3, Look Your Luck Roman number 3 with your 3 eyes, or the Look Your Luck Roman number 3 podcast. In addition, if you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, whatever you do, please use decorum. Hit me via email to ll3.podcast@proton.me. If you want to donate, go to PayPal.me or cash.app/look number 3. If you want to follow me on Steemit, give me a little crypto love there. I'm there at LL number 3-podcast. Yeah, so mainly on this episode, I'm going to be ranting, narrating some articles from this newspaper and promoting my commentary. So please feel free to download and share it throughout your social media networks, and I thank you in advance. Wow. So interesting things are occurring. Looks like they did a court ruling in federal courts that the firearm free zones in the post office are considered unconstitutional. And, of course, a judge in Florida on the state level, then open carry laws are considered illegal. So looks like this one supermarket called Publix is going to have that policy. You can open carry. However, businesses can still not allow it. It's property rights. It is guaranteed under Article 1, Section 2 of the Florida Constitution. And what makes me laugh, especially on social media, Facebook, all that, Channel 7 News, SDN, they're all like, oh my God, it's going to be a big bloodbath and all that. I've been in areas where there's open carry, and I don't wig out over it. And of course, in Florida, you do have concealed carry, so people are packing one way or the other. And I always prefer do it by surprise. You know, you don't have to display it. I always do it by surprise. That's just my view. But I do remember the what's that group? South Point 6 that happened in Miami Beach. Michael Taylor from Florida Carry, when he was doing fishing, which is legal in Florida during that time. And of course, the park ranger still cried to the city of Miami Beach Police Department, and they had guns pointing at him, all on video. And one officer's name was Castro. It's his Fidel, his Lord and Savior. Fortunately, I wasn't there. I would say, hey, Fidel Jr., yeah, Maricon. That's what I call him out on that, because it's all legit. He had the documents, but the people still complain. I told people Miami Beach is nothing more than a Declaration of Rights free zone. So I'm just observing everything thoroughly the best I can. They're supposed to be having some no more Kings rally on the 18th. That's comical as far as I'm concerned. But it's their man's in there. Their team players in there. It's okay. It's exceptional. See, being a faction slave always has benefits, allegedly. It just makes me, it is so comical right now, my friends. It is dangerous as well. So I always recommend people still prep up, do the best you can, decentralize yourselves. And I've been very thankful what I have. And too many people like to take things for granted. And they'll all complain about rent costs and so forth. There's people out there make more money than many of us who will probably hear this show, my listeners, and they don't even have a pot to urinate in. So a lot of interesting things are occurring right in front of our eyes. Observe responsibly. I know Candace Owens is doing the blowtorch on the Charlie Kirk assassination. Question everything. You can say whatever you want about her, but at least she had the courage to keep the ball rolling. And I always tell people myself, yes, it is a false flag event, regardless if it's fake or not. Who actually benefited, right? I'm not going to go around and say a particular group's responsible. I'm not going to say the Jews did it, because that's absurd. Because many people out there who are Jewish renounce this also. And there's others out there who are lefties or Democrats condemn it as well. We can go on and on. There's bigger fish to fry, folks. Stop nitpicking or popping pimples on your rear. That's what these That's those attributes on what people are focusing on. Who the hell cares that they have all this garbage stuff on the media, Jimmy Kimmel? But, when it came to Alex Jones, it's crickets on one side. So all you folks out there, like I said before, if you like to see Alex Jones censored but support Jimmy Kimmel, you hate free speech with a passion, you're nothing more than a bunch of totalitarian sympathizers. And I digress. I always believe in natural law. Been consistent about it for a long time. And don't get me wrong, we've all been swindled one way or the other, but we learned to better ourselves. I know they had a court ruling that ICE can still do their job on picking up trespassers, illegal aliens. They'll use undocumented, got sugarcoating it, but they're illegal aliens. Doesn't matter what they look like. I know many of them do have big rap sheets, but anyone interferes, that's called obstruction, harboring. Sometimes we could go bring it to treason. Article 4, Section 4 guarantees that the federal government has a duty to repel invasion and some insurrection. And you got folks out there, too, that say, oh, yeah, everything's great, and all hell's breaking loose based on the citizen journalism, not what the mainstream media has to say. But you always got your folks out there, even people I know on my social media page want to send me garbage. I just start laughing and like cult members, drink up. Jim Jones would be proud. But one thing for sure, it is an exciting time to be alive. So that's why I tell people, prep up, decentralize, and network with people that will work with one another. Not just go me, because that's for prima donnas and weak, pathetic people. Well, but always be safeguarding too. So, all right, well, I'm going to be reading here. This came out, I guess, yesterday. And from the American Free Press, Volume 25, Issue 4142, October 13th and 20th. You can look this up. You can subscribe to AmericanFreePress.net. And they have different deals, so you can check it out. I've been following this paper for a good long time. Darcy Tucker, may it so be forever free. He's the one that actually revealed Bilderberg meetings. So this one here came from the staff of the APF, FBI, Dumps ADL, SPLC, a defamation league or the Southern Poverty Law Center. Says here, in early October, FBI Director Kash Patel announced the nation's top federal law enforcement agency will be cutting all ties with the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center. The news was welcomed by many of the victims of these two groups. Far too long, these two organizations have lied about and smeared conservative groups and individuals, destroying the lives while promoting a radical leftist agenda. In an interview with Fox News on the subject, Patel said, former FBI Director James Comey disgraced the FBI by writing love letters to the ADL and embedding agents with an extreme group functioning like a terrorist organization, and the disgraceful operation they ran spying on Americans. This was not law enforcement. It was activism dressed up as counterterrorism, and it put Americans in danger. Since its founding in 1913, the ADL has targeted good Americans and organizations like this newspaper that didn't toe the group's stringently liberal and pro-Israel line. That era is finished, said Patel. This FBI formally rejects Comey's policies and any partnership with the ADL. Patel was largely responding to the ADL denigrating conservative individuals like billionaire Elon Musk and activist Charlie Kirk, who was killed recently by a crazed leftist madman. Allegedly, I would say. The ADL, however, has a long history of waging secretive spying campaigns and conspiring with radical leftist administrations, all in an effort to destroy good patriots and organizations, going so far as to label even congressmen as extremists for merely representing their American constituents. Patel's move prompted ADL to take down from its website its controversial glossy of extremism and hate, which encourages government and private industry to censor and isolate conservatives that the group doesn't like. If that wasn't good enough, Patel announced on October 3rd that the FBI also was terminating its long-standing partnership with the SPLC. Patel announced that the SPLC had turned into a smear machine. Their so-called hate map has been issued to defame mainstream Americans and even inspired violence. That disgraceful record makes them unfit for any FBI partnership. They've been doing it for a long time, my friend. But it's about time, I could say, right? I'll continue on. In explaining his decision, Patel said that SPLC has long promoted an anti-Christian bias and in years past has manipulated law enforcement into unconstitutionally targeting legitimate, peaceful Christian groups. I made it clear that the FBI will never rely on politicized or agenda-driven intelligence from outside groups, and certainly not from the SPLC. Concluded Patel, under this FBI, all ties with the SPLC have officially been terminated. The SPLC maintains an online so-called hate map that defines many good patriotic American individuals and organizations. The SPLC maps has been used by Charity Watch or organizations to discourage Americans from supporting decent, law-abiding, nonprofit profits, that are conservative. In the past, APF and its sister organization, the Foundation to Defend the First Amendment, have been targets of the SPLC's smear machine. Far too long, patriotic Americans and organizations have had to face the lies and defamation put out by the likes of the ADL and SPLC. By distancing the FBI from these groups, Patel has done a great deed for everyday Americans, especially those that have been hurt by radical left-wing organizations like these two. Well, I'll be very frank. I am very happy this occurred. It should have been done a long time ago. I renounced the Anti-Defamation League for nearly 35 years and the Southern Poverty Law Center around 30, maybe a little bit more, if I can calculate correctly. These folks are nothing more than charlatans. What's convenient for them. Bigotry is their money-making machine. I recall the Southern Poverty Law Center even called Alex Jones, Ron Paul, and Larry Pratt from the Gun Owners of America as potential domestic terrorists. These bastards, ingrates, got what they deserve. They need to be renounced because they're manipulators. They're the con artists. And you can never hustle a hustler like myself because I've seen right through them. And with the Anti-Defamation League, they are nothing more than wussies or cowards. They never had the courage to challenge the late, great Aaron Zellman from Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership on debating him on militias, gun control, and Judaism. That's another Gino institution. Jew in name only. You don't have to be an anti-Semite to figure that one out. So I'm very pleased this happened. My friends, all you folks out there that complain want everything quick, easy, and cheap, the magic lamp theory, or you're going to a McDonald's. When it comes to federal government, it takes time. A lot of damage has been done for at least a little over a century and a half, minimum. Centralization has been an issue. And listening to these quacks, I'm glad this occurred. You could thank Kash Patel, even though you have to agree with them on everything. But if you're pro-free speech, right to freedom to assemble, freedom of association, thank Mr. Patel. I'll let people know that too. I thank Kash Patel, and it's about time. Going to hit this other article here from them. It's all going to be from the American Free Press. I'm sorry. And so this was here, a message from the managing editor. Israel's reign of terror over free speech coming to an end. A weird thing happened on the way to the First Amendment's funeral. Free speech broke out on the most unlikely of topics, Israel. Previously, discussion of Israeli crimes is legacy of genocide, Zionist power over U.S. politics, and related topics of an anti-Semitic nature were officially off limits and could get you canceled. That included having your financial services scrubbed, your website sabotaged, and your company being added to the notorious hate list. A possible professional death knell. Behind these efforts to crush free speech lurked powerful, well-heeled organizations, such as the Anti-Defamation League, a notorious grievance outfit more interested in fleecing donors than making the world a better place. Recently, however, the ADL got its comeuppance, recognizing that the ADL is nothing more than a vicious smear machine. Director Kash Patel ordered the FBI to cut ties with it immediately. As far as Israel goes, the nation's utterly bestial behavior in the Holy Land has shocked people out of their self-induced, right? Self-induced? Yeah, sorry about that. Self-induced and media-reinforced stupor. No longer is the discussion of Israeli cruelty have failed. In fact, the danger of our special relationship with Zionist Israel is honestly being discussed by some of the most popular media figures in the world. Case in point, earlier this year, conservative commentator Candace Owens interviewed Phil Turney, a survivor of the deadly Israeli attack on the USS Liberty in 1967. It was the first time most people had ever heard about that wanton assault. Owens' Liberty episode has garnered 6 million views at last check. Thank you for those viewers that took the time to check that show out. I'll continue on here. To put that into context, an episode on Fox's panel show, The Five, the most popular mainstream news program on television, gets about 3.7 million viewers. It was a huge accomplishment for Owens, considering there was a total news blackout on the Liberty attack for decades. At last check, Owens has not been canceled or assassinated, though she is worried about that latter. Recently, former Representative Matt Gaetz of the Republican of Florida condemned Israel's barbaric actions in Gaza, warning refusal to condemn the humanitarian disaster is a liability with the GOP base. So far, Gaetz has not been canceled or assassinated. Jason Hinkle, a conservative social media influencer who is hugely popular in the MAGA world, blasted Israeli savagery in Palestine. He said Zionism is a genocidal ideology that fuels Israel's war machine, slaughtering Palestinians with U.S. backing. So far, Hinkle has not been canceled or assassinated. Kirk Mills, the executive order of the American Conservatives since its founding in 2002, a staunch Israeli cheerleader, has this to say about the master and slave relationship between the state of Israel and the United States. I think U.S. foreign policy should be beautifully divorced from Israeli foreign policy. I don't see how these two societies can coexist, that the U.S. can pursue its interests first. So far, Mills has not been canceled or assassinated. Steve Bannon, still a major fixture in the populist movement, is now unafraid to voice his opinion about Israel. In an August podcast, Bannon accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of trying to save himself politically by dragging America in deeper into another Middle East war. Bannon also added that Israel has almost no support among the younger generation of MAGA voters. So far, Bannon has not been canceled or assassinated. According to the aforementioned Owens, her best friend, Charlie Kirk, was opening his eyes to the subject of Israel as well. Verified messages between Kirk and Owens show Kirk having doubts about whether or not he and his conservative Christian organization, Turning Point USA, continue to support Israeli actions. After watching 65,000 people slaughtered by the Israeli Defense Forces, Kirk was also doubting whether he could, in good conscience, secure unwavering fundamentalist support for such a blatantly anti-Christian and anti-human nation. Turning Point USA has not been canceled, but Kirk was assassinated. Interestingly, possible Israeli involvement in that crime is also being openly discussed. And why not? Israel has a bad habit of murdering anyone it deems a threat. Scientists, politicians, diplomats, journalists, and peace activists. So why not Kirk? Thus, it appears that public remarks about Israel's rogue behavior are no longer taboo, even by conservative elected officials prowling the halls of Congress. Unlikely a place for truth to break out. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is leading the charge. She recently said, "It is the most truthful and easiest thing to say that October 7th in Israel was horrific and all hostages must be returned. But so is the genocide, humanitarian crisis, and starvation happening in Gaza. There's no such thing as two rights make a wrong." So far, Greene has not been canceled or assassinated. It wasn't too long ago that people were scared to criticize Israel for fear of being branded anti-Semitic and all the possibly devastating consequences that come with that epithet. But that has changed, and it is actually threatening to fracture the Republican Party. Younger Republicans can no longer be beholden to Israel, while most of the GOP old guard refuses to budge. This could very cost them elections in the future. It is a shame so few of our elected officials and news people had the guts to honestly discuss Israeli perfidy long ago, as has AFP. On this topic, AFP was decades ahead of them all, and it's encouraging to see a new generation mimicking us. We will never get any credit, of course, even though that it is our writers who paved the way, took the heat, and opened closed eyes. That's Paul Angel, who is the managing editor. And you can say this: we've been forewarned from John Jay's Federalist Papers 2-5, the dangers of foreign powers and influences. Made it very clear, self-explanatory. I encourage everyone out there to read those documents. And plus, don't forget George Washington's farewell address. Very unique as well. If we don't learn from the past, my friends, we're damned to repeat it. But one thing for sure, tide is turning. And I'm very pleased about that. And it's not going to go after the Jews as a whole. That's absurd. Criticizing the Israeli government isn't anti-Semitic. Bibi and his goofballs can stick it. Because to be honest, they're losing their grip. And we all know that the big protests are happening 9 months before the October 7th event. And they're still doing it again. The Israeli people are tired of it. And there's even reports that IDF soldiers are blowing the whistle as well. I was watching some of the clips from Redacted News, and I'm like, oh man. And I'm not surprised, because remember, Bibi's approval ratings were going into the outhouse can. And this occurred when your approval ratings are bad. Going to war is like having a war executed, try to save you temporarily. It's happened with George W. Bush on September 11th. Even the bombings in Oklahoma City with Bill Clinton. Even Obama, his approval ratings were slacking too, and they had to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. which some people still buy the official narrative. Oh, yeah, it's like that. They're responsible for blowing up that one plane over Scotland. And I'm gonna make this very clear. If you buy that, I got palm trees to sell you in Pluto, all right? I'm not saying that event was it was very horrific. Don't get me wrong. A lot of beautiful people lost loved ones. In my opinion, with Gaddafi, he was trying to create a African Union currency system, African Union government with the currency system that was backed up by gold, and Gaddafi had tons of gold in that nation. Now, I was informed, it's hell in a handbasket. People can live, you can say whatever you want about the man, but there's some areas I have to give him props for. It's just, you got to look at the bigger picture. We could even go further back as Abraham Lincoln. His approval ratings were horrible too. Then when the southern states separated, hey, we'll do that setup at Fort Sumter. And, of course, he did a stroke of a pen, attack them, without congressional approval, an illegal war. If people think it's over slavery, the main idea, you're delusional. I'm sorry to say that. It's a lot more than what it is. Centralization has always been dangerous. So this is why we all got to be aware of these patterns. We could even go to, with the approval ratings, I've got the president's name in Argentina around 1982, who decided to invade the Falklands. They were bad as well. And of course, after that war, it looks like he ran out of Dodge because the people there wanted to lynch him. So I gotta look at all those angles thoroughly. But one thing I gotta say, I am very pleased on what is happening. And one thing about the American Free Press, it comes up America's last real newspaper, populist and independent, not Republican or Democrat. So always make those judgments. So you can go to AmericanFreePress.net. You can subscribe, and you'd be very, very you thank me later. And check this out. There's a couple of things here. I'll be reading. There'll be maybe a couple here from news you may have missed. U.S. voters sour on Israel. Less than half of U.S. voters, 47%, say they believe that support for Israel is an American national interest, according to the survey of U.S. voters in September. That was down from 69% in December 2023, 3.5 months after October 7th. Hamas raid on Israel. Opinions of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu were even more negative. Only 21% of the respondents say they had a favorable opinion of Netanyahu. Theories on Kirk killing. On September 21st, FBI Director Kash Patel wrote on an internet social media site X that federal law enforcement will be investigating a number of theories related to the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. We are examining every facet of this assassination, wrote Patel. We meticulously investigating theories and questions, including the location from where the shot was taken, the possibility of accomplices, the text message confession and related conversations, social media site, Discord chats, the angle of the shots and bullet impact, how the weapon was transported, hand gestures observed as potential signals, near Charlie at the time of his assassination, and visitors to the alleged shooter's residence in the hours and days leading up to September 10th. So, like I said, there's a lot of questions to on this matter, and like I say, in good faith, he could be a patsy. So I'm just, like I said in my past episodes, you better back it up in good faith. Don't follow this hype and hoop. So there's a lot of questions on that horrific event. So I'm just going to try to see what else I can hit here. But it's good. Let's say it's a good little newspaper. I'm just going to look at the real January 6th coup by Dr. Ron Paul on freedom of speech. In my first comment after the events of January 6, 2021, I criticized those who called a protest a coup, pointing out that some of the same politicians and bureaucrats denouncing the ridiculous farce at the Capitol as if it were the equivalent of 9/11 have been involved for decades in planning and executing real coups overseas. In their real coups, many thousands of civilians have died. The media at the time played up the violence committed by a relative few at the protests to stoke a national outcry and demands for justice. More than 1,500 Americans were charged over the incident and nearly 500 were imprisoned, including outrageous prison sentences for relatively minor crimes like entering the Capitol building through doors opened by the police and filming the event. I will stop right there for a moment because I can tell you this. I've seen live feed from citizen journalists. And I saw the police let him in. I'll continue on. While most Democrats and Republicans in Congress harshly denounced the January 6th insurrectionists, a few members displayed appropriate skepticism over accepted government narratives. Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky, who's a Republican, for example, was relentless in search for answers to a simple but critical important question. How many insurrectionists were actually undercover FBI agents and other law enforcement officers, and what role might they have played in inciting the violence? Damn good question. It happens all the time, my friends. All you got to do is pay attention. I'll continue on. Massey grilled then Attorney General Merrick Garland several times, but Garland would not budge. Remember, he's a coward and a bend over Bob. I'll continue on. He refused to say whether there had been any undercover federal agents in the crowd, though, of course, he must have known. Recently, we learned a little more of the truth with the release of the FBI's long-lost after-action report. We know that more than 250 undercover agents were in the crowd. According to the report, they were given roles, including crowd control, that they were not suited for. Some agents cited in the report complained for political biases within the FBI against conservatives. What other task might have been given to a politicized FBI undercover team? In addition to the undercover agents, there were more than 24 paid informants in the January 6th crowd. Representative Barry Loudermilk, Republican from Georgia, who chairs the subcommittee investigating the matter, asked an important question. With that many paid informants being in the crowd, we want to know how many were in the crowd, how many were in the building. But I also want to know, were they paid to inform or instigate? Were they paid to inform or to instigate? That is a good question. We do know that the event was used by incoming Biden administration to demonize and persecute the political opposition. There is no telling how many Americans would have liked to use their First Amendment guarantee of free speech to criticize the Biden administration, but were silenced by fear of persecution or worse. It is easy to conclude, seeing so many arrested and handed long sentences for nonviolent crimes, that it's better to keep quiet. At the time, the United States was still in the grip of COVID tyranny, where speaking out against the science could get you canceled or worse. This was another way to silence people who are not going along with the program. In the end, January 6, 2021 was a coup of sorts. It was a coup against the First Amendment. The lesson for all of us is we do not regularly but peacefully exercise our First Amendment guarantee. We will definitely lose them regardless of who's in power. Damn straight. These are called natural rights, not constitutional rights. And Dr. Paul has always been consistent on this matter. And this is why I'm a person like myself proudly say he was the only presidential candidate I rallied for. Why? Because his track record is impressive. It doesn't matter what party he's in. It's the individual's actions. And Thomas Massie is very good, including Marjorie Taylor Greene. Right, you can say whatever you want about that woman. She could be a loudmouth too, but her constitutional track record is impressive. So that's how I see things. And I know the last Democrat who was 100% too on their voting record was the late, great Larry McDonald. He was president of the John Birch Society at the time. He was killed during that Korean Airlines. Some people say it may got taken hostage because he was planning to go to South Korea on how to counter communism. He was a big, serious threat. We always got to look at these things for sure, folks. And I just really gets to me when certain individuals try to cross my mind here. But let's gonna probably do see how far I'm doing here so far. Oh wow, okay, cool. But I'm just hanging out, man. That's all I'm doing. So I'm just doing my thing and got someone online. Thanks for listening. I might just do a couple more here. See what's going on. Yeah, I'm just gonna look at this one here. It actually came from the articles. Public service announcement. Okay. The death of truth. The truth dies when righteous men no longer have the courage to speak it. There's a quote here. To find out who rules over you, find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Attributed to Voltaire. Ralph Waldo Emerson also stated, when a whole nation is roaring, patriotism at the top of its voice. I am compelled to explore the cleanness of his hands and the purity of his heart. This could be para-purchase to say, when a whole nation is claiming one thing at the top of its voice, I am compelled to ask the question, is the whole nation right, or have they been deceived? Vilified German leader Adolf Hitler once stated, what good fortune for those in power that people do not think. This statement is as valid today as it was back in the 1930s, during Hitler's rise to power, and perhaps even more so. Here's some examples. They can be easily proven with few examples. 1948, President Harry Truman, under pressure from Zionists to fight his coming election, caves in and approves the Israel state in the Middle East. This was greatly opposed by many advisors in the government, stating that it would unsettle the Middle East for many years. Since then, Israel has engaged in wars with all of its neighbors, committing many despicable atrocities. 1948, Jews drive over 750,000 Palestinians from their land, killing many and stealing their property. The U.S. does nothing. 1953, most Americans have never known the incredible story of how the CIA, with the permission of President Dwight Eisenhower, covertly overthrew the democratically elected Iranian president, Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, and replaced him with a repressive and violent Shah Reza Pahlavi, all in the quest to steal Iranian oil. That was considered Operation Ajax. It has been declassified under CIA. And in due time, the Ayatollah Khomeini, they utilized that for everything else 25 years later during the revolution. So, yeah, it's called, you can say Blowback. Chalmers Johnson, a good book to read, by the way, Blowback. It does talk about that. So, continue on. 1963, the murder of President John F. Kennedy and the cover-up by the Warren Commission that claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone killer when the facts truth proved otherwise. A good percentage of the U.S. citizenship is still accepted that Lee Harvey Oswald was the killer, and most couldn't care less. 1964, the staged Gulf of Tonkin incident, coast of Vietnam. This event allowed President Lyndon B. Johnson to escalate the war in Vietnam, which ended up in killing over 58,200 U.S. troops and millions of innocent Vietnamese and Laotians. But as admitted by then the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, 25 years later, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was presented to the public, never occurred. In fact, the U.S. Navy purposely instigated any confrontation that occurred that day. How many U.S. citizens know that sorry, folks. I'm just like, McNamara made that admission, and how many even care, right? How many know or even care about the staggering devastation that the United States brought on Vietnam? It's estimated that 4 to 5 million men, women, and children died. In the South, 9,000 to 15 hamlets, 25 million acres of farmland, and 12 million acres of forest were destroyed, and 1.5 million farm animals were killed. In addition, 879,000 children were orphaned, 181,000 disabled, loss of arms, legs, eyes, hearing, and mental damage, and 1 million widows. And do not forget the 1,000 tons of Agent Orange the U.S. dropped on Vietnam, resulting in concentrating high rates of cancer and birth deformities. And there's even people who actually utilize this Agent Orange or got into the veterans. They were affected by it as well. I'll continue on. The 1967, Israeli aircraft and naval vessels attacked the USS Liberty, killing 34 U.S. sailors and wounding 171 more in the Mediterranean Sea, with the intention of sinking the ship and blaming it on Egypt. That's interesting. On the Egypt. Good grief. It was an obvious attempt to expand the war and get the United States to defend Israel. With friends like that, who needs enemies? Today, I would challenge you to randomly find anyone outside of the readers of this newspaper who is even aware of this attack. The general public is blind to Israeli atrocities. I'll be frank, the first time I've heard about the USS Liberty, I was actually reading a magazine called Soldiers of Fortune. They had a little article, a little book on it as well, a book on the USS Liberty. So I always keep that in the back burner. Then I started reading it a little bit later on. I'm like, wow, unbelievable, And it is insane. And plus, even Israeli jet fighters too, they're all coming out saying the same thing. We were forced to do this or get court-martialed. I'll continue on. 1983, a truck bomb kills 241 Marines in Beirut. Former Mossad Israeli agent Victor Ostrovsky admitted that the Mossad knew the details before the attack, but then Secretary of Defense Casper Weinberger stated that the United States had no knowledge of who did the bombing. Some former Marines believe Israel organized the attack. With friends like that, who needs enemies? There was no outcry from the government or the public. Asser Harel, a founding chief of Israeli intelligence, predicted the 9/11 attacks in New York City. Mossad plants a radio relay device in the apartment in Tripoli to send fake messages that appears to be from the Libyan government. The U.S. government is successfully tricked, and President Ronald Reagan ordered the bombing of Libya. The Mossad motto, by the way of deception, thou shalt do war. With friends like that, who needs enemies? Our government obeys Israel and their criminal activity. What suckers are we are? Two of Esser Harel Sr. Mossad agents, Abraham Shalom Ben-Dor and Zivi Malkin, get the security contract for the World Trade Center, but the Port Authority cancels the contract when their criminal history is discovered. 3 years later, Shalom Bender goes to work for Kroll Associates, which in 1993 gets a security contract for the Port Authority and the World Trade Center. Security what security? A Zionist organization. 1993, Mossad agents, with the help of FBI informants, infiltrate a Muslim terrorist cell and provide vital support to the terrorists, inevitably detonating a bomb in the basement of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 6 people were killed, 1,000 injured. The Muslim terror cell could not have carried out that attack without Mossad and FBI assistance. Israeli-American Michael Chertoff, I think it means son of the devil in Hebrew, if I'm correct, plays a key role in prosecution, and Zionist judge Michael Malsky provides over the case against the blind sheikh, who is blamed for the masterminding the plot. FBI informant Ahmad Salam is paid $1 million for his testimony, but the controlled media says nothing and leads the public to believe that Muslims want to destroy the Twin Towers. No, this is 8 years before 9/11, where Israel was already preparing to brainwash the American people. See Hitler's above quote. A neocon group, Project for the New American Century, PNAC, suggests that a catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor may be necessary to facilitate a neocon agenda. One of the 10 signers of the PNAC document was Dick Cheney. September 11th was a catastrophic and catalyzing event, and Cheney was at the center of it. For those that don't remember, Cheney was vice president of the United States in 2001 when the attacks occurred. And I go a little further in that too. Jeb Bush, Joseph Ellis Bush, who was governor of Florida, he was involved with the PNAC program. And if you look at Executive Order 2001-261, the state of Florida was under martial law. That was on September 7th, 2001. So definitely look that up. You can find it on the public records request. And plus 2001-262 made it more specific, including seizing property, but quote, compensate you later. So I'm just giving you some facts here. And I recommend people start looking at this data. I'll continue on here. Israeli Mossad company ICTS, International Controlled Security Screening at the U.S. airport on 9/11. Directors of ICTS include Yair Shamir, son of a notorious Israeli terrorist, Yitzhak Shamir. Why does the U.S. hire a foreign company to handle security at the U.S. airport and the media says nothing? 2001, Israeli intelligence agents created false histories for alleged hijackers. Israeli spies posing as art students live near the 9/11 hijacker patsies. Duplicate documents are used. False histories, a standard procedure for the Mossad false flag operations. July 24, 2001, Larry Silverstein gets the lease for the World Trade Center through fellow Zionist agent Lou Eisenberg, chairman for the Port Authority. Silverstein and Eisenberg are both members of the UJA, which is the United Jewish Agency Board. The UJA is a major Zionist fundraising group. Since 1996, Silverstein has close relations with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It is reported they talk weekly. And here's what happened here. 2001, September 11th, the new Pearl Harbor occurs as the U.S. government, the Israeli government, and pro-Zionists all proclaim that Osama bin Laden and a branch of Arabs flew planes into the World Trade Center. The media is quick to continue placing blame on bin Laden, although there is no proof. Israeli military chief Ehud Barak interprets 9/11 on BBC and Sky News in London, blaming Osama bin Laden and calling for the United States to launch an operational concrete war against terror. On the morning of September 11, 2001, the Twin Towers collapse at free fall speed, and thousands of tons of concrete are pulverized. No more questions of falseness at the planes brought down the Twin Towers, or questions how molten steel could be seen flown down the side of the towers prior to the collapse. Although it is not the known fact that jet fuel or office furniture cannot bomb at temperatures high enough to melt steel. It generally requires a steel mill running a temperature of over 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit to melt steel. Jet fuel will hardly ever reach 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit and more likely burn more quickly at below 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. September 11th, 5:20 p.m. At approximately 5:20 p.m. on 9/11 Building 7 within the WTC complex, a history building suddenly collapses at free fall speed with its own footprint. This is something that had never happened before in all history unless the buildings have been set with charges to implode. Ironically, early in the afternoon, the BBC broadcast the destruction of Building 7 prior to its actual collapse. This was noted when the announcer declared that the building had collapsed, but in the background, it was still standing when the announcement was made. September 11th, or 9/11, Netanyahu praises 9/11 atrocity to the New York Times. It is very good. It will generate immediate sympathy. Later in 2008, he said, in Israel, we are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon and the American struggle in Iraq. This struggle has cost the United States thousands of lives, trillions of dollars, destroyed both Iraq and Afghanistan, and continues to this day. Yet, Netanyahu says it's very good and it will benefit Israel. What kind of sick individual will make such a statement? Post 9/11, Michael Chertoff, an Israeli dual citizen, is put in control by Attorney General John Ashcroft to investigate the events of 9/11. For day-to-day decisions, Chertoff has the last word. Destruction of crucial evidence begin immediately in a total violation of the crime scene. Post 9/11, two Zionist-owned junkyards managed hasty destruction and exportation of evidence, shipping tons of steel to Asia to avoid any on-site examinations of evidence. Zionists with conflict of interest presides over 9/11 lawsuit. Judge Alvin Hellerstein manages 9/11 tort litigation, while his son is a lawyer in Israel with the firm that represents ICTS, a key defendant in the 9/11 litigation. Hellerstein dismisses the case against ICTS, and every 9/11 case is settled out of court, preventing evidence being presented for the public to see. Zionists manage compensation funds. Kenneth Feinberg and Sheila Breinbaum, and both Jewish overseas compensation settlements for 9/11 families. Not a single case goes to trial. No 9/11 discovery occurs in court. March 2003, in March, Zionists controlled 9/11 myth. Appointed director of 9/11 Commission, Philip Zelko, frames the agenda and decides what evidence the commission will see. A specialist in public myths, Zelko comes to the commission with a complete report outline before the staff even begins working. Continuing, the controlled media ignores crucial questions and facts surrounding 9/11. The mainstream media pushes false narratives about 9/11 and the war on terror, while ignoring evidence that disapproves the official government propaganda story. The media is completely owned and controlled by the pro-Zionist organizations. After the murder of President Kennedy in 1963, the CIA coined the phrase conspiracy theorist in an attempt to depict and demean anyone questioning the actions of our government. The media jumps in this pool with both feet. Anyone questioning the assassination of John F. Kennedy or the involvement of Israel in both Kennedy assassination and 9/11 are portrayed as kooks, people on the fringes of society who are not to be taken seriously and shunned. 2023, October, after suffering more than 75 years of murder, stealing, and destruction at the hands of the Israeli military, Hamas attacks Israel. Hamas fires take more than 251 hostages. Israel responds and kills hundreds of its own citizen hostages. Following the Operation Hannibal Protocol, the Israeli army then turns its attention to the civilians of Palestine. A steady massacre continues to the present day with more than 65,000 Palestinian civilians, mostly women and children, being murdered and starved to death in a violation of the Geneva Convention. Many countries are calling for a stop to the massacre and the recognition of the rights of the Palestinian people, but the United States continues to send billions of dollars in weapons to Israel and support these crimes. President Donald Trump talks a big talk until Netanyahu tells him what to do. Then he becomes a pussy, excuse my language, footing patsy. 2025, Israel attacks Iran and surprisingly is attacked by Iran. Iran successfully breaks through Israel's Iron Dome. President Trump surprises Iran by dropping bunker buster bombs in an attempt to destroy Iran's nuclear program. The success of this action is dubious. It has been reported that Christian activist Charlie Kirk met with Trump prior to the attack, urging him not to go ahead with the attack. Trump is reportedly very upset with Kirk. This was one of several actions by Kirk that indicated that he had come to realize the criminality of Israel. Netanyahu and the level of influence Zionist organizations have over the U.S. government. It's also reported that Kirk turned down a large financial donation to Kirk's organization, Turning Point of America, by Netanyahu. Kirk had finally realized the criminal and anti-Christian actions being committed in the Middle East. September 10th of that same year, 2025, Kirk is assassinated in Utah. The crime scene was not locked down, and a number of people moving about and removing items, one being the camera located behind Mr. Kirk. On the 12th, many more questions go unanswered. Alleged assassin Tyler Robinson was taken into custody for the murder. Is Robinson the killer? Is he a patsy? The same as Oswald? Was Israel involved? Don't jump to conclusions. The 13th, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu speaks out saying that that Mossad was not involved or responsible for Kirk's death, repeated so many times that some people question his statements as unbelievable. Max Blumenthal of Gray Zone on the Chris Hedges report raises questions that both Kirk as well as Trump are fearful of the Israeli criminal activity. Could this be why Trump kowtows to Netanyahu? It is known that Kirk was fearful of Mossad actions. September 21st, Charlie Kirk is laid to rest. Funeral services turned into a political event as Trump makes an ass of himself again. I have not attempted to cover all of the major events on the 19th and 20th centuries. These include the Second Bank of the United States, the Civil War, the assassination of Presidents James Garfield and William McKinley, the Spanish-American War, Woodrow Wilson, World War I, the Great Depression, FDR, World War II, the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, and more. I hope to be able to cover these events and more in the future public service announcements. The immediate question is, how long will the American public continue to believe the lies committed by both our government and the state of Israel? Credit must be given to Victor Thorne for much of the information included here regarding 9/11. Max Blumenthal's interview should be watched in full to realize the full impact of the relationship between Israel and the United States. Other credit goes to the Barnes Review, American Free Press, Michael Collins, David Ray Griffin, and other great investigators. This public service announcement was paid for by Jean Gray, registered nurse, retired. It says here, go to jeangray1900@gmail.com. Bravo. A little history lesson, my friends. And I'm very happy to see that. But one thing I can tell you for sure, and thank you, Simply Jackie, for the love. I deeply appreciate it. One thing we always got to look at, my friends, if we study history, especially in these United States, our Declaration of Independence, what is one of the main goals of the American people? Never trust the government, regardless who's in there. All you got to do is read, my friends. I know many people out there that do, but spread that information around. And I do renounce foreign aid to all. Doesn't make me a bigot, anti-Semite, racist. It's all hogwash. Don't fall for it. If you want to donate to the certain nations you support, do it on your own dime, not mine. What's been happening for at least 150 years, at least, is a disease called Lacanianism. It's all centralization. Do things, everything one size fits all. And both mainstream parties are doing that. These private institutions. Or they have to question. I always support decentralization, think and act locally. Brian McCallahan is very good, by the way. I recommend folks to check him out. Good historian. And look what's going on, too, with going on in Chicago and many places. Because remember, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution about repel invasion. Okay? Many of them was them for that, trespassing. The states and local governments don't have to commandeer, but they can obstruct. This happened during the Fugitive Slave Act. People were trying to find the fugitive slaves, and they got intervened. They got shot at, too. They're like the U.S. Marshals and all that. That was considered constitutional back then. History repeats itself, folks. But we need to learn from the past. If not, we're damned to repeat it. Well, I think that will be it for the time being. I thank everyone for listening, but feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, recommendations, all that good stuff, wherever you do, please use decorum. You can hit me via email to ll3-podcast@proton.me. What I'm going to do, I'll leave the website link for AmericanFreePress.net, and I'll attempt to put the articles in there that I've narrated. I may do it again this week for the rest of the stuff. So I'm having a good time doing it. So if you want to donate, go to PayPal.me or Cash App @/Lucas3. You can follow me at Steemit. Give me a little crypto love there at LL3-Podcast. Observe responsibly, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. May your guardian spirits be with you.